He walked up to Stephen A. Smith, and it was caught on social media, and Stephen A. had this thing about it and everything else. Keep my son's name out your mouth, pretty much, blah, blah, blah. How do you view that? Like, that just seems very weird that LeBron James, who has conducted himself the way he's conducted himself, now turned into that. Like, there's multiple ways you can view this. You can view this through the lens of, LeBron, are you stepping over the line? Your son is an NBA player, blah, blah, blah. Or LeBron is a dad. He's going to try to protect his son, no matter what way you view LeBron's machinations to get Bronny on this team. I have a feeling, because you've been around Bronny in an NBA locker room, that you view this through the lens of Bronny James.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, like, you know, you mentioned, like, first of all, like, none of this is normal, right? Like, on any front. It is not, generally speaking, normal for an NBA player to break a huddle and walk to the scorer's table and walk past a journalist or a commentator, right? Like, generally speaking, the you know, that is not where people sit. But Stephen A., being, you know, who Stephen A. is not sitting on press row. He's sitting courtside with Larry David and Ari Emanuel, and he's sitting courtside directly between the Lakers bench and the scorer's table. So, like, there is, like, an element of, like, sort of, like, he's right there. Like, he sat there a couple times this season. Okay. So, the opportunity was there, I suppose, right? And certainly LeBron, smart enough to know that people are going to see it. There's a level of performance in all of this, in addition to probably being sincerely pissed. I just think of this, like, I've dealt with this all season. It is just really hard to have normal conversations about Bronny James. It's been normal since the Combine. It's been hard since the Combine when people started talking about evaluating him as a prospect, and you would hear things like hostage theories, basically, where, like, would a team draft him even as early as, like, late in the first round, and a draft that teams didn't feel was very good because of the notion that the Lakers will then eventually have to come get him and give up picks and better drafts. Like, these were conversations that were happening around the league within front offices. Now, I don't think they were very long conversations, but they were happening. Like, what is the value in having this guy to trade him then later to a Lakers team or whatever team LeBron James is on that wants to sort of save him? Like, is that a better use of then our pick than, say, on, you know, a two-way player or somebody we're going to have to stash in our G League for a couple years? Okay, so there's that part of it, right? It's been impossible since day one to evaluate him fully as an NBA player because, and when you try to do it, you look at his number. Because part of the value in drafting Bronny James, by the way, is that you're betting on the fact that he's LeBron James's kid. And you're betting on his athleticism. You're betting on, you know, the type of basketball he's been exposed to for his entire life, and that's unlockable to a degree. Like, so it is really hard to separate it. Plus, Vinny, there's the fact that, not dissimilar to, like, Thanasis Antetokounmpo, like, if you have this player and it makes your best player, we talked earlier in the first one, percentage points happier, and it makes him percentage points more engaged. Like, one of the things LeBron has said about playing hard every night this year is his son is there. He wants to show him how to be a pro night in, night out. Like, worth it. 100% worth it. Like, they should draft Zuri James if that's going to be the case. Like, that matters too. I do think, like, what's happened this season is, you know, and it's unfair to me, I think, to like, look, nobody thought Bronny James was going to, like, matter in the NBA this year.
Right.
Like, even people who are, like, in on the player, like, that this was always a developmental project. It has gone really well in the G League this season for Bronny James.
Yeah.
He's played very good basketball down there. He's taken pretty big steps as a point guard, which is, like, you know, or as, like, a primary ball handler, which, you know, starting the summer was going to be a real problem. I mean, G League stats are really hard to put together. I'm going to pull this here right here. This is, like, his 8 regular season games or whatever. There's a tip-off tournament too. That's the first half of the year. You know, 34 minutes a game, 44.5% from the field, 39% from 3 on 8 attempts, high volume. You know, he's up to 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 turnovers, a little too high, 2 steals per game, 21 points. Okay. For a player that you've taken at the end of the second round, who has obvious limitations, he'll always be 6'1", right? Like, I think he's learning how to play at an NBA pace with an NBA motor, getting in that kind of shape, certainly getting confidence after a pretty miserable first year in college, which started, by the way, with a near-death experience.
Right.
I think all of that is totally fair to say when you discuss Bronny James. But the but here is, though, if you do talk about him as sort of how he has performed when he's gotten opportunities in the NBA, and really he's had two all season. He played in the opener, which was sort of an orchestrated moment. Not sort of. It was an orchestrated moment. And then he played in Philadelphia. And that was not orchestrated. That was, he had been playing well in the G League, and this is what you do when you need players and you've got a guy who's playing well. You want to give him an opportunity and see how he does. And he did not do well. Like Tyrese Maxey cooked him. His confidence was very low. The game looked way too fast for him. And it was not a good game in a bad spot. And I believe it was a national TV game too.
Yes, it was. It was a TNT game.
And after the game, JJ Redick owned it. Said this was a bad idea. Or maybe we put him in a bad spot. And I think they did put him in a bad spot in that game. But quite frankly, I mean, this is like, we are talking about a player that is still, a season or so away, who's still trying to figure out what kind of player he's going to be in the NBA. And it is really hard to have these kind of nuanced conversations about him because he's incredibly famous. We go into these arenas. As soon as the Lakers go up 10 points in the fourth quarter, you hear, we want Bronny Chance. It's not normal. And it's not normal for LeBron James to be able to separate the fact that it's his teammate or a second-round pick or some other NBA player, because it's not. It's his son. And, he's got to be sensitive to conversations about Bronny James. He has been sensitive to conversations about Bronny James since I saw LeBron at Summer League this year ahead of the Olympics, right? Or I'm sorry, Team USA. And he was still talking about people like Bronny had a decent game that day in it was either Summer League or the Cal Classic or something like that. He had played well, and LeBron was like even that day was like talking about people who were saying bad things about Bronny James as a player. It's just like, I don't know, as a dad, when I go into parent-teacher conferences and people talk to me about my son or his attention level, like where he's at as a reader or different things like that, I take it all personally. I know I shouldn't, or maybe in my case, I probably should. It's probably a reflection of me. But like, I think like when he has a bad game in T-ball, it's like, I don't want to hear that. Like and it's just this being on that type of stage, I think underscores how weird the situation is generally.
No,
did I carry enough water for everybody involved? Did I carry enough water for everybody involved there?
Are your shoulders tired? I'm just curious. Are your shoulders are you a little sore? Are your shoulders a little sore there? You deftly walk the line. No, I think, being honest here, I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to what it's like to be LeBron James in this spot. Like, you're a parent, as you just mentioned. The weird thing is, from a sober, just journalistic standpoint with no emotion involved, it's very easy to criticize LeBron and say, is that your son or is he a basketball player? A professional basketball player? Like, which one is it? Because if he's your son, then
both. It's both.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Emotionally, I can extract the emotion from it and say it's got to be one or the other. You know what I mean? But you can't extract the emotion from it. This is all emotion. Like, the conversation about Bronny James is all emotion. It's the nepotism. It's the black father, blah, blah, blah. All these different things. Well,
and it's LeBron saying things about Bronny, like being good enough to be in the league last year and stuff like that.
That is where the conversation got weird. That is where the conversation got really unfortunate. And LeBron has to own that.
It's not weird, though. But it's not weird. Here's why I can tell you it's not weird. And this isn't exactly the same. One of my mentors in this business, Bruce Feldman, terrific college football reporter. Good friend of mine for years. I have two children. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. My oldest, when he was like 2, was like a very loved baseball and was like very comfortable with a bat in his hand, hitting a ball and stuff like that. And I remember showing Bruce a video of Cam hitting a baseball. and being like, look at this. Like, I mean, like, this is crazy for a 2-year-old to be that. And he's like, okay, Dad, like, calm down. Like, every dad does this with their kid. Like, and I watched it and I was like, oh man, like he could be on the White Sox now. And he might. The White Sox are awful. But like there was video, like an element of this where you like see him and you see the best, right? You see the best. You also see the very worst. But like you when you show other people, like I'm itching to show you a video of him hitting a double in his last T-ball game right now. Granted, he ran to right field after the single. He took a pretty wide turn. But I'm still very proud. And so, like, I actually don't think this is, like, that abnormal, other than the fact that it's all happening in an NBA locker room instead of, like, a cigar bar or a backyard around a grill or something like that.
It's weird.
Like, he's not the first. He's not the first father to say this about their kids.
Right.
Yes.
It's weird because we're seeing it. It's weird because LeBron went out and tweeted. That's the only thing. LeBron went out and tweeted last year, you know, Bronny is better than most of these guys or a lot of guys playing in the league. And that basically poked everybody's antennas up or whatever. The weird thing is, if I'm Bronny James, and this has nothing to do with any of the confrontation, the last place I want to be at 19 years old is being around my daddy every day. I spent my whole life trying to get away from my parents. And you know what? You know what's real fun when you're getting away from your parents, Dan? College. You can have a lot of fun in college. And like right now, regardless of what it is, G League, Lakers bench, or whatever, it does not look like Bronny James is having a lot of fun. And like you said with LeBron,
I disagree. I disagree.
You think this is fun?
I think that this has gone about as good as it could have gone, and probably even maybe slightly better. I think there have, like, in terms of internal distraction, it hasn't occurred. Like Bronny is like really, really well liked within the locker room. He's really well liked by the media. He's really well liked by his teammates, by his coaches. He's a really good worker, great kid. People like being around him. He's funny. He's like very much like seen but not heard, like as a rookie. You know, does the right stuff in that way, right? Like, does not
I have heard good things about him.
So there's been like that part
way.
of it.
Yeah.
You know, think about like, okay, like like part of this too, right? As you mentioned, like if you're 19 years old and you don't want to be around your dad, like that, like in normal circumstances, again, I would agree. His father for his entire life has spent months of the year not around. You know, basketball season runs parallel with Bronny's basketball seasons, right? Like generally speaking, I was going to write this that night. Turns out something else happened. When the Lakers won at Madison Square Garden, Bronny scores in Madison Square Garden. You know, at the end of that blowout game, pretty neat moment, right? Father and son both scoring in the same game in the Garden. Do you know how many times Bronny James had been to Madison Square Garden before that game?
Is that his first time?
First time ever. Okay. And you're like, how is that even possible? Right?
How
like the Cavs,
how else would he beat it? Why else would he be there?
He was playing basketball. Like he was doing stuff, you know, while his dad was doing this stuff, right? While his dad has been going everywhere. And now they're getting to experience basketball together. And like, I think that's pretty special, as convoluted and contrived as it can be at certain times. You know, you see Bronny, the look on Bronny's face when like LeBron like has like a poster dunk or something like that on the bench, like celebrating those plays, celebrating his teammates' plays. You watch the Laker players celebrate when Bronny does something well. You know, it's like I said, I think like this could have been like a disaster in a lot of ways, in terms of like a lot of hurt feelings in the locker room, things about like nepotism and favoritism and different stuff like that. It hasn't been that at all, being there. Like, I think Bronny's played well in the G League. He's shown an indication, you know, that he's willing to work. He does not carry himself. You know, he doesn't violate one of the big NBA like locker room unwritten rules, which is like know your place. Like he does not violate like that rule, like ever in that locker room, as far as anything that I've seen or heard. You know, and there have been far less famous rookies in this league that have broken that rule. You know what I
That's a
mean?
good point. That's a good
Who've
point.
wanted, more for themselves than what's out there. So, like I said, I think it's hard to have this conversation because like there is like a lot of like people put their feelings onto this a lot. Also because like we've never seen it before, and I think as people we don't process things we can't compare to other events very well. But like I said, being around it every day, I think it's been, it's gone pretty well, and it's crazy, Vinny. As far as like the Stephen A thing, like sort of like re-brought it to the surface. It's not been a thing like we've spent a lot of time talking about this year because, like, quite frankly, the season has been so crazy.
Yep.
And so many other wild things have happened. Like, like that night at Madison Square Garden, like LeBron said, playing with Bronny is the thing he's been most proud of in his entire career. Right? Like, big story that night for 7 minutes. And then they traded for Luka Doncic. You know what I mean? Like, Bronny James is a pretty big story until, like, wildfires wipe out, a chunk of the city, including the head coach's house.
Right.
Like,
right.
Like this, like at the start of the season, it seemed like this was all just going to be a part to placate LeBron James at the end of a career as the Lakers headed back towards the play-in tournament. And, oh, look, like, they're second or third place in the West. Like, it's just like, it's kind of faded mostly to the background.